Alright, so grab your E-Ride kit, tip it out. In your kit, you're going to get your harness and your nuts, bolts and spacers. So we're going to start by taking the bash guard off. As you can see, this is the EBMX bash guard that you'll need for proper fitment with the X9. Alright, the first thing you want to do is undo your motor nut. Now, if you don't have an agger-dagger, you probably want to do this before you flip the bike upside down. Right, so now you want to pull your little booty back, cut the cable tie, then you want to unplug your encoder. Now we're going to take our X9 off. Alright, so now we're going to remove our phase wires. Now don't throw away these booties. They are really handy, especially because the X9000 is quite tight and quite close to the metal frame. Now we're going to undo the motor bolts, take all 4 motor bolts out. And I just unplugged the kickstand sensor to get out of the way. Alright, now you want to remove your belt and your motor should just come straight out. Alright, so now we're going to remove the X9000 stock motor E-Ride harness and plug in our XLB60 E-Ride harness. Start with the main plug into the bike. Now you can tape up the original E-Ride encoder plug, as we won't be using this. The harness bypasses it. Alright, grab that XLB60 Race and drop it in. The first bolt we're going to grab is the 52mm. The spacer we're going to use is the 23.2mm. And you want to screw the bolt in finger tight, just a little bit. Now you want to do the non-drive side front mount and grab your 27mm bolt. This is your smallest bolt. Then you want to grab the small spacer. Now depending on your frame you might need a shim or two, just see how it fits. Next you want to grab your 32mm bolt, as well as you'll need a couple shims on this side. You might need one shim, you might need multiple shims, just see how it goes. Then lastly you want to grab your longest bolt, which is your 57mm bolt with the 20mm E-Ride spacer. And you also might need a couple of shims, once again depending on your frame. And it will look like this with the tensioner on the left side. Right, grab your keyway and your pulley. Now obviously you can also run a dirty bike chain kit. The main thing is to make sure that your sprockets are lined up. So we do provide another spacer for the jack shaft if you need to move the sprocket over a bit. Just have a look and see whether you need it or not. But in our case, we're going to be sticking with the belt. Now this is a nice Gates belt in order to handle the horsepower. The stock belt will definitely probably break. Now we're going to flick the belt on. Now I have a little trick for this. I use a flat blade and I just roll it around like so, get it lined up, and it just pops straight on. A little bit of force, a little bit of mucking around, but it just goes straight on like so. Now you can nip up your motor bolts to make sure the motor's not going to wobble when you start to tension the belt or chain. Tension it up. Now we like to run our belts pretty tight. You can run these gates pretty tight. The worst thing that will happen if it's too tight is wreck your jackshaft bearings. But we don't like any slip, so we run it pretty tight. Alright, now we can install our phase wires. As you can see, we're using the booties. The booties are great because it's going to stop any kind of risk of them shorting out. Tighten these up. Now these just need to be tight enough that the phase wires with a good reef left and right, they do not move. Make sure you're also running your lock washers, very important. Alright, we can plug in our new harness into the X9. Make sure your arrows are lined up and screw it up nice and snug. Now we can plug in our encoder to our new harness. And then we can re-plug in our kickstand sensor. Shove it all back in the booty, put a cable tie around it, and you're ready to rip. Right, now we can put our X9 back. It is a bit of mucking around. The E-Ride's quite tight for the X9. What can make this easier and less risk of pinching cables is undoing the battery tray plate behind the X9, but take your time and make sure you're not pinching any cables. Right, now we can reinstall our bash guard, our new EBMX bash guard, making sure once again that cables aren't getting pinched. Tighten it up and flip the bike back over. Alright, so you've installed your XLB60 Race. Let's jump into the app and set it up. Alright, so come over to settings, go to general, then we want to select our bike type, which is E Ride Pro. Then we want to select our motor type, which in our case would be XLB60 Race. At the time of filming this tune is not in the app yet, but when you buy yours, it definitely will be there. So in this case, we're just going to select XLB60 because they're the same encoder. It will calibrate, it's just not the right tune, so it won't run properly, but that doesn't matter for this video. Now you want to set up your battery series. Hopefully you've got a big boy battery, an upgrade battery of some description. So whether you're 72 or 82 volt, 22S or 20S. And then we're going to go high power harness. We're going to select there, 22S high power harness. In our case, you might select 20S high power harness, whichever. All right. Turn up your amperage. Turn that up, crank that puppy up, depending on what your BMS can handle, whether it's a 300 amp BMS or whether it's a big bad boy 400 amp. Then scroll down and we're going to go to wheel diameter. In our case, it is 620. Grab a measuring tape. Measure your wheel from top to bottom, and that's the number you'll put in there. That's okay. Then our gear ratio is 9:14. I did a whole video on how to calculate your gear ratio, but I'll do this one for you. So if you're running the belt drive on your E Ride Pro, the stock belt drive, it is 2.21. And then depending on your rear sprocket, in our case we're running a 58, but all you do to calculate that, so if we go to my calculator, our front sprocket is a 14, so all we do is we go 58 divided by 14 gives us 4.14. Then what we do is we take our first drive times our second drive. So in our case we go 2.21 times 4.14 gives us a gear ratio of 9.14. You don't need to worry about the other numbers. Just the first two numbers after the decimal point you'll put in. So 9.14, there we go. Now select your temperature units, Celsius, Fahrenheit, whatever you want. Your speed units, kilometers or miles per hour. Then we'll get to motor direction in a second. We now want to press save. And it'll ask us, do we want to calibrate our motor? Yes, we do. Make sure nothing is obstructing the wheel and it's off the ground, and press yes and start. And let that do its thing. So in our case, we twisted our throttle and it did nothing but just go Calibrate again if this happens to you. Even though it's successful, sometimes it does fail. Calibrate again. In our case, it was because we were idiots and we had the tyre and we had load on it because the tyre was rubbing on the stand. Even though it did say successful, wasn't right. Let's put it in mode 1 now. Oh, that's a bit better, isn't it? And our motor direction is correct, but if it isn't, head over to general, come down and go to motor direction. In our case, it's set to anti-clockwise. You might have to change it to clockwise, but we're going to leave it on anti-clockwise because it's going the correct way. Now we can set up our modes and levels. Feel free to do whatever you want here. I've cranked him right up to 30 kilowatt and 900 phase there. Save. And then we will come down to calibrations and we'll make sure our twist throttle is calibrated. Always a good thing to do. Press start. You do nothing for the first 2 steps, and then on the 3rd step, we press the throttle. Bang on that throttle. Hold him back. And there we go. Let it go and press save. Now we can also calibrate our thumb throttle, always a good thing to do when we've made any changes, so we'll do that as well, just to be on the safe side. Same thing as your throttle, do nothing for the first 2 steps, and then press it on the 3rd. There we go, let it go, and press save. Now, if we scroll down a little bit further, we'll see field weakening. Now, this motor can handle 100% field weakening. So if you want all the herbage, all the power, crank him up to 100, but you know, don't say I didn't warn you. But if you don't, and you want to save a bit of battery, you can turn it down a bit as well. You know, 70, 80 sort of thing. If you want to save a bit of battery, you definitely will. But if you want all the herbage, which we want all the herbage, we'll turn it up to 100 and we'll press save. Now, if you didn't get a chance to calibrate your motor, don't fret. This is where you will do your encoder calibration. So you just press setup and that will do the same thing as what we just did. So before we click out, we've also got low battery power reduction level. Now this is really cool. So you can set this at whatever level you would like. Lower the level, the less it's going to take effect. Higher the level, the more it's going to take effect. Well, percentage, I should say. So in our case, we like to run it at like 10% because it will basically start to tell us that the battery is low by lowering our power pretty much, you know, at the end of the battery, around that 20% once it starts to really lose its power. But you can turn it up. It will certainly give you more range because it will kick in sooner and lower your power sooner. You can play around with it, whatever you see fit. Save and click out. And that's it for the E Ride setup. So that's it. Roost your mates. 30 kilowatt monster. Get after it. You're gonna love it. It's gonna be sick. It's gonna be mad. You can see it now. He's gonna be flying, pinging, just absolutely pinging. Enjoy. See you in the next one.